Hey, good morning or good afternoon. It's actually probably afternoon to most people right now. My name's Felicia. I'm a type 1 diabetic and I've been one now. So I turned 41 in June, so I'm 40 right now. And about 38 years ago, in a couple months, I became a type 1 diabetic. First, I would like to segue. I originally was going to do this video, do this by video. Then I decided, okay, I'm going to type it all out. 4 paragraphs in, I now can't find it. Like, I popped off the screen to talk to a relative, and now I can't find it. Don't know if it got posted, don't know what. Very irate because the fact is, I really do not like talking about myself as much as, ironically, I have a YouTube channel and my Facebook post and things like that. And to get back to it, the reason why I don't like talking about myself in the grand scheme of this is I'm tired of having labels. I'm never going to be normal in any grand scheme of things ever again. But at the same time, I'm tired of people looking at me and being like, oh, she's a type 1 diabetic. She isn't doing what she's supposed to be doing correctly. Oh, she's an alcoholic. Even let me sidetrack that. I'm in recovery, so I'm a sober alcoholic and addict. I don't use or drink anymore, but at the same time, when someone hears that, the stigma of being like, oh, they're an alcoholic or an addict, da 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 da, like, I'm exhausted with that. And not like you really needed to know that, but that's part of my story. At the same time, I truly my life is my life, and like I was just so when it comes to like diabetes and everything, one of the things that I've really realized is the fact that, and this is where it's going to I'm going to probably irate a couple people. The communities that I've been a part of, even if people say they're not, it's like high school all over again. Let's look at the cliques. Who's the popular one? Who is the one that's doing the best? Who has the best advice to give everybody else but their own self? Like, it just gets annoying. Like, and the funny thing is, to be part of like this group and a couple other groups I'm part of, I had to raise the flag of being like, hi, I'm a type 1 diabetic. Yeah. Because you know what, in the grand scheme of things, the support does help, because there's going to be people that aren't part of my diabetes community that doesn't understand what's going on. But honestly, it gets exhausting. It gets exhausting of being like, hey, like, so that's kind of my deal right now. I so back to the history of my diabetes. Was diagnosed back a little after April in 1988. I'm a military brat. My father was in the Coast Guard. By the time we lived in New York City, where I was diagnosed, I'd already lived in that was my fifth state that I lived in. So, and the only real reason why I mention that is because part of my story of becoming a diabetic was on a base. So, like, why was she on a base? Then also, that isn't where I live now. And so, but basically, my mom had a history of UTIs. And basically, when things started happening, my mom just thought I was having UTIs. But prior to Easter in 88, I had developed chickenpox pre-vaccine time frame. And this is kind of where to this date, they believe that was the outlier of what would throw everything in my system completely off. So basically, I had chickenpox. I then within like the month or so after, because it was like right after Easter, I would develop diabetes. And I remember that directly because for a period in time, I had broken into the candy hardcore. Like, I'm a candy junkie. I love candy, though I really do try to behave on it. Like, there's a couple pictures that I'm gonna post that show my candy stash. The funny thing is, the Jolly Ranchers that you're gonna see in the picture, I've had for like 5 months. The almond roca I got at Christmas time. It is now February. We're almost in March. So like I get candy, I acquire it, but I don't always like go to town on it. But I do like to occasionally splurge. So, but basically that particular year, my mom had bought candy, and like any good parent of two children, and doing the whole Easter bunny thing, I basically hid or my mom had hid the candy from us. I found it because I was notorious for always sneaking into shit. Like to this day, I tell my mom, I'm like, yeah, I swear I should work for the CIA. If anybody works for the CIA, are you guys hiring? Yeah. Um, joke slightly, but okay. So back to it. So I broke into the candy not once but twice, and so by the time I was diagnosed, I truly, truly thought the reason why I became a diabetic because my blood sugar was extremely high, and I'll segue back to that in a second. But I thought it was because I broke into all the candy. No, that isn't why I became a type 1 diabetic. Just genetically, I was prone to become one at some point. So back up a little bit. So the month before I became a diabetic, as in meaning before I was diagnosed, the ironic thing is during all this, and I've asked my parents this a couple times, was have you guys actually noticed that basically have you guys actually noticed that I was losing weight? Because we all know the signs of becoming a diabetic is thirsty. That one I definitely had. Urinating. Definitely had that one. Like loss of weight. Tired. I kind of like maybe I did. I really don't. They really don't remember that either. Because I've always been a night owl, and I think like pretty much I was going to bed like between 9 and 10, to be honest. And then so basically, I basically started wetting the bed hardcore. And what I mean by hardcore is that basically children in themselves like might have accidents. For whatever reason, they might have accidents, and wetting the bed might happen. But like once a week, once a month, might that type of thing might be normal. When you're wetting the bed multiple times in a week, even multiple times in a night, that's kind of a red flag for something. This again where my mom thought I had UTI. And she basically was just like they didn't think of it as a huge issue, so they didn't like was like, oh, we have to go to the doctors now, because it wasn't something that was really talked about. It wasn't something they had a red flag up for. I was the first one in my family to be diagnosed on any variant of diabetes. So basically, with that, my school started prior to that too. My parents started with me wetting the bed. They would like basically tell me that, okay, you can't have any fluids after 6 p.m. Well, they basically were trying to see like basically what would cause them for me to stop having the urination situation. Nothing was working really. School ended up getting involved because they started noticing that I was basically requesting to go to the bathroom or go get water from the water fountain regularly. Most kids, maybe once every couple hours or whatever, but I was literally starting to be like every hour. Like I was either going to the bathroom or I was asking for water or more time. So they called my parents, and my mom had made an appointment at the clinic. And so basically, by the time we got to the clinic, this is also back when lab work for any blood work took a while, took a couple hours to usually to get to do the results and stuff like that. Again, the 80s, not today where it's like, oh, you got your A1C in literally like a minute and a half at the lab and stuff. My urine came back first, and basically, again, no one really thought anything. I wasn't vomiting, I wasn't passing out, I wasn't sleeping all the time. They just thought basically something was going on because of all the urination. So they did the urine stick, and it did not come back just like a pink, purple. It came back literally black. So they were like, okay, we got to ship you over to New York City. Again, the base I lived on was called Governor's Island, and it was a Coast Guard base in the harbor of New York City. So if anybody's familiar with New York City, the hospital I was taken to is over by Pier 17. I honestly, to this day, cannot remember the hospital's name, but it's where I would be diagnosed. They would then do the labs, things like that. By the time we got over there, it came back saying my blood sugar was over 1600. And again, no vomiting, no vomiting and puking are the same thing, so I'm not really sure why I'm repeating that. But like nothing out of the ordinary. Like I was walking, talking, like fully functioning, like just yeah. So they're like, okay, you need to start like we're gonna admit you. You're gonna be in the hospital. And to this day, my mom is very happy, and at the time, I was very upset hearing that, like, basically, because I have a younger brother, from both my parents, and my brother's 3 years younger than me. My brother absolutely hates needles. And I apparently took my diabetes like a champ. I hated, and I still do hate when, like, nurses, like, if I have to be admitted in the hospital, the only time I tell nurses that they're allowed to give me a shot, like if I'm not on my pump, this was more prior to the last 10 years. If I was sleeping, you better give me the shot immediately, because if I wake up, and I usually would, I would freak out. I have control issues. I don't like other people giving me my shots. I'm also someone who doesn't just go really fast. I go really slow for my injections, because I've nicked multiple microvascular veins, and that's always fun. If you've experienced that, oh my god, yay! So much fun. But so basically, during that point, they hospitalized me, and I learned how to give injections through through oranges first, and then we did it to me. At the time of living in New York, I moved out of New York in 93, where I would then move to Boston. During that time frame is when I literally would prove doctors wrong on a regular. Like, so if you are a diabetic who is aware of the honeymoon stage, you know it usually lasts during the first year of you being diagnosed, that all of a sudden your pancreas turns back on and you don't need insulin. Like it's like basically bursts that just randomly happen. For me, it was happening up to 4 years after I was diagnosed. And basically, like, I would actually be put on lockdowns in the hospital, where they would have a security guard making sure I wasn't dosing my insulin. This is like up to age of 12 and everything like that. I'm in the hospital. I have no extra insulin or anything like that. They would have me on basically, they would have me on a saline drip, because technically they needed that, so that I was getting my fluids in. But they would have a glucose drip ready to go, so when I was crashing, which had to be used on several occasions, like randomly, I would drop to 60, and we're like several days in of me last having an insulin shot. They would also have the insulin drip ready to go in case basically that like my blood sugar started going over 160. But it would usually take about a week, where basically it would actually like finally regulate out again. Today, because looking back at everything, because you gotta love hindsight. At the time, they considered it one thing. Today, it would be considered something else. And today, I believe the way that they would state it was basically that my fat pockets in my stomach, because a lot of it was in my stomach region that I would do my injections when this was happening, was that basically the fat cells were actually absorbing the insulin, and then basically at some point they would actually disperse, versus my actual pancreas. And so basically, like randomly, I would just get bursts of insulin that had been stored up, and then basically low blood sugars, and I wasn't being able to take my normal doses and things like that. There was other things that basically it was just, I was in and out of the hospital even when after I moved up here for many like years. Like my whole teen years were basically in and out, in and out, in and out. And there was even a point that I was actually allergic to human insulin. Basically, I had to be on pork insulin, because if I took human insulin, my blood sugars would react so oversensitively. Basically, there was a point where like my blood sugar was like 400, and they gave me human in the hospital within an hour. And it wasn't even like a big dose. I think it was like only like 5 or 6 units. It was basically a normal dose. But as quick as I dropped down to like 30 in less than an hour, which is not normal unless you're dosing, like hardcore and stuff like that. Because most people who know short-acting insulin, it lasts for 4 hours, but still it takes a half hour for it to react to start actually working, and then basically it has its peak about 2.5 hours later. So, like, doing that within an hour was kind of like, what the hell is going on? For several years during my teen years, pork was what the insulin that I was on. Then they got rid of pork, and basically we had to go back to Humalog or Humulin. And today I'm on Humalog. So today I'm on Humalog through my insulin pump. I'm on a 670G insulin pump. I am with a Guardian sensor, which I've been on a pump for 10 years now. I have basically it took a good 20 something years for them to convince me to go on a pump. They had recommended it multiple times during my 20s. And in all honesty, my 20s were not the best years for me. 20s were horrible because I was drinking, mismanaging everything, didn't have health insurance at some points in time, missed my diabetes expos because the diabetes expos and Jocelyn. When I moved here to Boston, I just realized I'm 16 minutes into this. Do you understand why a video is so much better than me typing this out? This is also why I hate talking about this. But when I moved to Boston, I actually had my only so far diabetic coma. I basically was found non-responsive, and my blood sugars were really low, and I was really, basically I was in the coma for 72 hours, and they took me from North Andover, Massachusetts to Children's. Children's is a fabulous hospital, to be honest. Like, first off, the food there is still, I think, great to this day. As a patient, it was fabulous. But, so I was in ICU, and this is where basically my new primary care doctor would introduce me to my new endocrinologist, who was tied to Jocelyn. And basically, this is also back in the days when Jocelyn had their inpatient on the second floor. And I was there for I think minimally a week after I got out of my coma. And it was kind of like where my parents say that I went from basically being a 13-year-old little girl to basically being a 10-year-old to a 9-year-old little girl. I perfectly seemed fine. Like, I was fine as a human being. But the type of personality type things basically started happening. And this is probably around the time that I started not feeling like I belonged in any real group of people. And it is what it is. Also, I believe it was the summer after, because I don't think it was the summer before. Because again, time frame, I just started going to Jocelyn in September of 93. So I'm pretty much sure September of 94 is when I'd be at Clara Barton Camp. Dr. Mansfield was my doctor during basically from 93 to pretty much 2007. God bless that woman. I claim half of that gray hair on that woman's head is from me. The other half from her son. That's my pitch on it. Because apparently her son's also a diabetic. Some people in this group know him. I never have. But still, I blame half of her gray hair on me because I was her biggest pain in the ass patient. She gave me many suggestions, a lot of me not doing what I needed to do, me being very hellbent. I just never, today, I really wish I could go back in time and take everything that I've seen myself go through, and go back. For issues that a type 1 diabetic with 30-something years of very improperly taken care of diabetes, because at points, up until I went on an insulin pump, my A1C was minimally a 10, 11. Minimally. Prior to that, I ranged usually around a 15 to a 13 for many years. I would sometimes get down. There were points even throughout that I would go normal, but like for the shit I've done to myself, like I said, I'm also an addict, a recovering addict. I did meth for 14 months back in 2004 to 2005. And the reason why I thankfully stopped was because Diabetes Expo did a kidney study, and basically where they did a free testing to you to see where your kidneys were. And it would be the first time I got lab results saying my kidneys were actually starting to shut down. Today, I'm supposed to take lisinopril for my kidneys. I'm horrible. I'm absolutely horrible at taking it. Because also, depending on the medication, it causes my blood pressure to go low. So it's kind of like, yeah. I'm horrible at taking pills. I'd rather wish all my medications were by shots. Because for some reason, you give me a vial, I kind of know that it's kind of life or death. Even though I've been horrible with it, and this is at the stage of my current life. I am a diabetic who has retinopathy. I've had several lasers to the back of the eyes. Over at Joslin downstairs at the eye clinic, I still see Dr. Silver. I refuse to let him retire. He's my last doctor there. I'm a faithful Joslin member. Joslin has been good to me. I'm running out of time, so apparently I gotta shut the fuck up. Excuse my language. But basically, yeah, that's the story of my diabetes. I'm horrible at taking what I need to. That's how it got me here. I have no partner. I've not had a partner who really cared. Wish I did. That one day will come. Got any more questions? I'll answer. Bye, guys.